To Differential Discussions. I'm Melissa,
I'm Dave.
and today we're back with another Do That Diff.
I'm getting excited. And we have a guest.
We do. We have Toula with us today. Welcome, Toula.
Hi, everybody. It's really nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me on here, Melissa, Dave. I think this has been so much fun, and I've been following your channel for such a long time, and I'm super honored to be here. I'm so excited to participate and get involved. So a little bit about me. I'm an associate professor at University of Cincinnati. I teach predominantly hematology. I also teach microbiology. I taught statistics, and in the past, I have directed graduate level research. I've taught. I'm helping out in the master's program at University of Cincinnati as well. There is a Master's of Science in Leadership program there, and I'm helping with their capstone projects on top of teaching some statistics courses and things like that. I've been a medical lab scientist now for over 25 years, close to 25 years, and worked in hematology labs both at the beginning of my career and even now. I work in a large cancer center, primary care facility on a PRN type of basis. I do training for some of their employees on differentials, urinalysis, all of those fun little areas. And then I've taught at both private and public institutions all throughout Illinois. And now I'm 100% remote from Chicago and teaching 185 to 200 MLTs that are trying to get their MLS degree. So I'm super excited, and that's a new adventure for me. And I'm super excited to be here and to work with all of you. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the work that you do. It's really important.
Thank you.
Cool. So we got a complicated one. Well, I can always tell how hard it's going to be by how happy Melissa is. It's the difficulty of the slide is directly proportional to her pleasure. So
So what do you think, Dave? Is it going to be a tough one, or is it
I'm starting to get worried. I'm hoping I was just really funny there, but yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Well,
usually the CBC results like that will give me a little preview as to what I'm in for.
All right. Well, let me pull up the CBC and the scattergrams so that you can tell if it's going to be a tough one or not.
Okay. Yeah, I love when my diff scattergram is just one big blob.
Oh, goodness
the analyzer is just like, nah, dog. All right.
Oh my goodness.
So,
interesting.
Yeah, this is interesting.
1 day old, right? Is that the age of the patient?
Correct.
I'm curious about that. Oh, 1 day old.
I guess that kind of okay.
So that's interesting.
Yeah, so sometimes all right, I can kind of see the populations a little bit.
Yeah.
So. And I'm glad you actually pointed that out. So probably have like a thing and then a thing.
I'm seeing something at the bottom there.
Yep, and then we got these. Yep, right. Which should be our EOs, yeah, maybe.
I think they're a little too far out to be EOs, but possibly. Okay. Maybe what's pointing out at me is this, and I don't know how to, let's see.
Yeah, there's like annotation tools. Depending on what you're using, at the top of my screen, I see a view options, and then down from there, there's an annotate. So I do my doodles with.
Okay. View options.
Yeah.
Annotate.
So, red cell, H&H, MCV.
Like this.
Yep. Yep.
There we go. Okay. Well, H&H, considering it's a 1 day old, doesn't look terribly remarkable. I mean, the high MCV, the high MCV is pretty common for a 1 day old. but I don't know about this.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
looks
no.
interesting.
Yep.
Possibly.
Yep. That's
And
really, really on the
then-
high side, right?
And this.
Yep. Yep. So we'll pay close attention to the red cell morphology, see if we see anything there.
Yeah.
And then the NRBCs, right? So we
Mhm.
have to kind of think. So this technology too, this I believe was the XE 5000, Melissa.
Gotcha.
Does that sound accurate?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are a little older. So, and the reason why that's significant, pointing out to the audience, is that they weren't as great at NRBCs, especially if there's like a lot of crazy NRBCs.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that might be influencing our white count a little bit there too. So
Agreed. I'm looking at this going, that white count seems a little bit up, but it may be artificially influenced now by some other populations.
yes.
Um,
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm trying to look. Let's see. Can I move this? We're kind of blocking the IMI channel. Like I
Yeah.
can't see. I can only see part of the IMI channel to see if there's a population in that IMI channel, because that's what I often look at to see if there is, but it's not part of the whole differential on the right hand side. And then I
Yeah,
kind
my
of glance at the platelet histogram. I
Mhm.
don't see anything remarkable there.
Yeah. Our histograms look like meh.
Yeah, they look okay.
Yep. And then the IMI channel is actually, I must confess, I never really got very skilled, let's say, in interpreting those. Most of my growth happened during the XN age.
So at the beginning of my career, I worked off of the Avid cell dynes, the 3500s. And then now I've been working on the XNs. And so I don't have a whole lot of experience with the XEs to see where the differential part comes into play. But sometimes you can, if the XEs are the same as the XNs, sometimes you can see remnants on but I can't see that part because our pictures are kind of blocking that part of it. I don't know if I can move it, but
oh yeah. So there should be a black bar across the top there. You should be able to just kind of smush it around the screen wherever it was convenient.
okay. Oops. I gotta get my annotate tool off. I didn't mean to do that. Undo.
No worries.
There we go. Got my annotate tool. And then there we go. Oh yeah. See like out here. Like right around there is a little bit suspicious that there might be something there.
All that
So
kind
judging from what I see, yeah, I'm expecting kind of a little bit of, there might be some NRBCs happening here.
Yeah. That's what I think is going to be.
Is the baby full term? Do we have this information?
I don't know that information.
Okay.
And we came from we have like a children's hospital is what I meant to say.
Got it.
So we would see kids across the spectrum, healthy and otherwise.
Okay.
So I think, are we
You
ready, Toula?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's take a look.
Clear all our drawings, and then I'm gonna get this out of the way. Well,
Little, yeah, sharpen it up a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Little tricky to see, Melissa, but I see purple dots.
yeah, that's
Highly technical there, Dave.
That's me. That's me in a nutshell. Yeah, it looks like there's white cells and stuff. Yeah, I have no idea what's going on there. But
let's go down to 40.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Oh.
Okay. So
Oh.
this is really troubling now. I don't want this anymore. So it looks like my initial impressions, right? So I'm looking over here at these two fellows, right? So
one of the things I try to teach my students is often like you have to look at the population you're dealing with and kind of correlate that back to where they are physiologically. And I always say kids are a ball of energy and they need to get that energy from somewhere. And oftentimes they're getting it from their blood cells.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that they get a lot of those pieces tied in together. They have all of these red cells that are kicking out, and it's okay if they have all of these red cells getting kicked out from time to time, especially on a 1 day old. Depending on what the circumstances are when they're first born, they can kick out some of these younger cells because they're just their bone marrow is in such an active state of production. So I tend to look at first what the ultimate stage is. So I tend to look at the red cells first and kind of get a lay of the land and then see and what I'm seeing, like, let me find it. Like there's definitely poly happening here. Like there and there. And that can happen in a newborn too. They tend to throw out a lot of poly to begin with because there's such an active state of replication. Whereas you see geriatric patients, their bone marrow tends to slow down and kind of maintain itself. And so that this tells me, okay, I'm seeing poly. I'm definitely seeing some changes in the red cells here. And looking at these, I agree with you, Dave, that they kind of look more like along the white cell lineage. That don't necessarily match to what's happening with the red cells. So this is super interesting. Let's keep going. I want to see more. Like if I'm just looking at the white cells now, I'm like, this definitely doesn't look like a 40,000. We're on 40x. If I'm estimating 2 to 5 red cells per field is about average for a 10,000 white count. But this is only one field. So I would want to look at more fields to make sure I'm getting a representative sample.
I agree. Yeah. So maybe more fields on this this mag, and then we'll think about going to oil when we're ready.
Yeah. There's a little bit more.
Yeah, focus seems a little
a
little blurry for me.
This part of the slide.
Okay, so there's some cells that
that went up at 12 o'clock.
I really
looks interesting.
I really want to look at that one.
Do you want me to drop?
I kind of do. I know I'm not going to cheat here, but this is definitely where I would spin to oil and look at the. So it looks like it's some kind of an immature granulocyte or something, but
Oh. Are those, wow. They look like basophilic granules a little bit.
So like my first thing was like promyelocyte, but the granules are like dark. It's like
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, it's obscuring the nucleus. They're tiny pinpoint granules. But it almost looks like it's of the basophilic line, you know,
that's what I was worried about. Melissa, they're purple in your scope, right? Those purple granules. Yeah, this looks like an immature baso or something.
Yeah.
But they're pinpoint.
You said they're pinpoint?
Yeah, the granules aren't large.
Okay. So then maybe this is just some kind of toxic granulation. But they look different in size to me. I mean,
and it could be. so that's the interesting part of it. We can't really call it. If it's a promyelocyte, that's common to all the granulocytes. So like
Yeah.
we don't start calling the secondary granules that make up a basophil and EO a neutrophil until they get to that myelocyte stage.
Yeah, because
You know,
now that
I
I
always
look at it, I think I see like the azurophilic pink stuff, and then I see purple stuff, but
so
this might
maybe
be a
you think it's a
limitation.
really a young Milo, but it
Yeah,
could be a
well,
limitation of the scope.
I think that, yeah, I think we have a limitation of technology. Like, I would love to have my eyes in the scope on like on this.
Completely. Completely.
I might still be flailing just as much, but I think it's safe to say this is some kind of an immature granulocyte, be it basophil or neutrophil.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we keep looking on oil. I think I do that 40,000 white count doesn't make sense though, right? Like,
Oh no.
so
I mean,
far?
we saw 5 or 6 images that had probably five cells in it. There was one that had 10, but that's not representative. So something's interfering there.
Yeah.
That 40,000 doesn't seem right. And we're not, the other reason, I mean, I know they do the corrections with the smudges. And I've been seeing a few smudges here and there, but nothing out of the ordinary to account for the 40,000 white count. I'm still wanting to see. I'm not holding out completely on NRBCs. I haven't seen any.
Yeah.
Oh, see, there's another one.
Yeah. So some kind of a left shift here, likely. I'm just going to start to presume that they're neutrophilic, just because that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I always tell my students, follow the granules first and let the nucleus follow. Because I tell them, I'm like, you can tell from the stages of maturation. They always have such a hard time with how to differentiate with them between the the myelo, the meta. I said, well, if you think about it, I said, blasts have invisible primary granules. I said, the only way you can tell is by doing the old cytochemical stains, which nobody really ever does anymore. Then they do the very visible primary in the promyelocytes. Then you've got primary and secondary in the myelo, and then you move to secondary in the meta and tertiary in the bands and segs. I said, see, so every stage has its own little set of granules that you look for. So this looks like, yeah, I'm looking at this going, I see there's like right here, there's some primary granules, but then out here are these secondary guys. And it's still retaining, the nucleus is still retaining its round shape. So yeah, it kind of looks like a very young myelo. I look for whether or not the nucleoli have closed up in that case. And I don't see any open pockets like the pro would have the owl eyes looking at me going, woohoo, I'm here. But I don't see them here.
But yeah, so definitely I start worry about like infection, right? So 1 day old. So yeah, I think that's the general worry here, because it's, yeah, let's keep looking. Is that cool? Yeah.
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 See, now this band here, right? Because you can do, like, I can go literally from one side to the other side without lifting. That's kind of my little telltale of a band. Some people are real conservative when it comes to bands. I was always taught, I was always taught that if you can go from one side of the cell to the other without lifting it up, it's enough to call it a band. But some people want that perfect sausage shape where there's equal widths on either side. There's even distribution. I totally see that. And I tend to do that, but are those, I see some like these guys. Does that look like, I can't tell. Those look darker than the rest of the granules there.
Yeah, I think so. I think at this point I'm willing to take the gamble that what I'm seeing is toxic granulation. It's, left shift. And then here's the other thing, honestly, if I could divert to this cell. So at the top of that cytoplasm, now my name's obscuring it. At the top of that cytoplasm, that basophilia there, that looks like that lymph is not happy about something.
Yes, agreed.
Full on reactive, no, but given these left shift elements now, and we have a normal platelet, normal hemoglobin hematocrit. So this is, I'm definitely in this ballpark of like sepsis or some other kind of infection or something. But
yeah, there could be more happening here. Let's keep paying attention to those lymphs, because I agree with you, Dave. There's definitely something angry happening on the top of it, but I don't see it extending off of the bottom.
Can you both just take 1 second and talk about why does the chromatin look so soft if it's a lymph?
Yeah, it's just baby lymph, right? So we have this is where you get into these. So like you learn on normal lymphocytes, typically, like that's how I learned, right? You normal adult lymphocytes. And then when you start working at somewhere like a children's hospital, you're gonna think everything's a blast, okay? So you really have to kind of reset and calibrate to the patient that you're looking at and they generally are going to be much softer, much more immature. And there's no reason to hit the roof, right? They've been alive 1 day. They probably don't have leukemia. so a lot of those things kind of like inform. I'm glad Toula pointed out the patient demographic in the beginning, because I kind of just, because it totally changes the way I look at this.
Right.
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 So yeah, that's what I would say is.
I would have eventually told you.
Yeah. He's stupid. He's 1 day old.
But the other thing that's interesting, and so this is again, I'm writing a couple of book chapters for Mary Lou Turgeon's book, and we're just talking about this and the science behind the chromatin and why it's softer has to do with some of the nuclear processes that are happening. There's more DNA replication. They're in an active state of transcription and translation. You've got, and again, it makes sense because the baby's young. They're in an active state of just churning out a lot more cells. I always go back to when I start describing one of the challenges that in my 25-year career, especially teaching for the last 20 years, there's always speed bumps when trying to explain atypical lymphs versus monos. And I always tell them, go back to the texture of the lymphs compared to the texture of the monos. I said, there's very clear differences there. And they're like, how do you know that? I said, think about what they do. For me, lymphocytes, they're sort of the mafia of the blood in a sense, because they're literally going around and either they're making antibodies, which means they're armed with weapons, or they're helping out other cells by getting what they need out of the blood in terms of cell-mediated immunity. Whereas monocytes are your typical garbage collectors. They're non-specific, they're everywhere, they're scruffy looking. So another, I guess, telltale sign of a lymph is that they've got that smoother chromatin. It looks like you took a rolling pin and just rolled it out into this smooth arrangement. And that's kind of what I see when I think of lymphocytes, is that they tend to have this smoother, more organized way. Like imagine a mobster in his pressed out suit that just looks so perfect, and that sort of thing. Whereas monocytes are your typical blue collar, garbage collectors that are just going to be scruffy behind the collar, wearing t-shirts and jeans and that sort of thing. And that's what they look like. And they remember that. Honestly, they remember that, right? I'm like, they all have a role and they all doing different things. So it's just a matter of remembering what they do. So that's the way I look at it. This is just, a nice little lymph in his mobster suit.
All right, let's see if we see more mob bosses, perhaps.
There you go.
I'm gonna adopt this. All right, neutrophil.
Yes, nothing out of the ordinary. Tiny little bit. Ooh, hello. What is that? That's interesting.
trying to move. There we go.
It's too young to
Is it anucleate, Melissa? It just looks like there's a purple blob in the middle, but I can't tell.
Yeah, I can't tell chromatin, or I can't tell cytoplasm at all.
It just looks like a stray nucleus.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. So not uncommon for an extruded nucleus from perhaps an NRBC, although we haven't really seen any NRBCs yet. So
No, not at all.
I'm not too worried about that. Thank you. But can you let's keep looking. Yeah.
No, I would call that a seg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's kind of got a scruffy mono look to it.
I just wanted to bring our garbage man out.
The other thing too, like babies' monos look less like they look better than our scruffy monos.
Yes.
They tend to be kind of like round and like pretty in the cytoplasm. That's
yes,
cool to see. Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked at it.
And then is that? I don't think that's anything, because that's the other thing. Like,
but a Howell Jolly.
I don't know. I don't think so.
No.
So that's one of the first things I did was digitize our slides, and when you do that, you kind of lose that ability to find focus to see if it's truly in the cell.
Yep.
But sometimes even on a digital platform like this, where it's 2-dimensional, you can see that this is not quite in focus compared to the rest of the cell in the background.
Yeah, that's subtle, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, so to the students watching, right? So what Toula is talking about is when you have a microscope in focus, you have a focal plane, and if something is just junk sitting on top, it'll be impossible for it to be in focus and the cell to be in focus at the same time. Yeah. You can differentiate what's real, what's
they're in two different planes. Yeah, so you're going to see one come into focus as the other one goes out of focus. Yep. But if it's inside the cell, they'll focus together. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, which is awesome. And then the rest of this is junk.
Yeah.
And I've been sort of taking note of the platelets. The platelets look okay too. The estimate seems to match up with that 330 white count or platelet count that we had before.
Yep.
I don't see anything striking morphologically in the red cells either.
Nah, like occasional target.
Yeah, nothing major.
Yeah, this is typical PD experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the other thing for students looking. This is what babies' normal red cells look like.
Mm-hmm.
It is really, I don't think I've ever seen like a newborn that came out with just like normochromic, normocytic, just like perfect discoid. Like this just doesn't happen. They're always a mess.
It is.
All right, so let's see.
And nothing out of the ordinary. And another thing, students, if you're looking at this, is that consistency. Like we've been seeing occasional targets, an occasional cysto, occasional thing, but it's not consistent among every fields. And that's what I tell my students to look at. The minute they see one, they want to write it down. And I said, no, you got to see it in at least the majority of the fields you're looking at in order to make sense out of it. And if it's consistently there, it's associated with a pathology, you're going to see it consistent in most of the fields you look at. Not every single field, but most. And I tell them, keep looking as you're counting your diff. I said, that's an easy way to kind of check that box off.
Yeah.
They always want to treat them as separate. I noticed that. Do you notice that among your students too, that they think, okay, I have to do this first and I have to do this second, I have to do this third. And I said, no, as you're diffing, you can take an extra minute and look at the red cells, look at the platelets as you're doing the fields, and it counts towards it.
Yeah, I'll try to drop little like wisdom nuggets. Like it depends as they come to me, because I'll watch them going through their process.
Yeah.
I like to I'll just circle like a vulture around while everyone's doing their diffs. And I'm just casually watching how they do things, and I'll spot little technique issues. And that's one of the things where I'll talk about like workflow and how doing the diff first. So first of all, I always do like a 10x scan, go down to oil on a good spot, do your diff. And while you're doing your diff, you're collecting data. And like you say, right, I'm seeing platelets, I'm seeing the red cells. And And then at the end, I do my formal, like, morphology assessment. Yeah. And then you have more data than if you started with like red cell morph or so I like to, I do it like that, but I don't know if that was what you were.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, and it's funny because I have a diff sheet. And so I break it up where I give them all of the thing. But I told them, I'm like, you can start tallying. Like the scientist in them wants to be very analytical. So they will go in and they will literally tally every single red cell. Like this field has 1 target, this field has 2 targets, and then they'll start adding, and then at the end make their assessment, which I think is what they want. I think is valid. If they're trying to keep track of everything that they're going through. Same thing with the estimates. They'll make a little box and they'll say, okay, I have to look at 5 fields. Here's my field 1, how many cells I see. Here's my field 2. So they'll get really technical in terms of organization in the beginning, but that's why it takes them 30 to 40 minutes to do 1 single diff. And I keep telling them, by the end of the 6 weeks that you're with me, this has got to be down to like 5 to 10 minutes, like at the most.
Yeah.
I said, when you go to the clinical lab next year, I said, they expect you to churn them out pretty quickly.
Yep.
And they're like, but you've also got automated diffs in front of you. We don't. And I said, yeah, you're doing them all manually. So you're kind of running blind, but sometimes that's a good thing,
that honestly, like, of course I want the data. Like, we started this out looking at all that data. I want it. But if you don't have it, it's not a thought. Just do the diff.
Right.
Call the things you see and just keep moving. Yeah. And
that's it.
So
that's it.
All right, let's see if we could see more cells. But I'm kind of like, I'm personally starting to, not starting. I'm kind of in the realm of like, this is a reactive, potentially some kind of
maybe there's a residual. Looking at the neutrophils, we're seeing more neutrophils with that toxicity happening.
Yep.
And I would take an extra minute and look for the other signs, like the vacuolization and the Dolly bodies. I always say the toxic granulation jumps out at you. It's kind of like Paul Revere saying the English are coming kind of thing. And then I just take and then I just take an extra minute to look for those Dolly bodies and then look for the little the vacuolization and see if there's any other signs. But yeah, I'm thinking along the same lines that there might be some a mild septic thing happening here, because I don't see a very drastic left shift. Like I don't see a terrible amount of metas and mylos, maybe an occasional pro, unless the patient's getting treated, in which case that's a whole other can of worms to look at. But considering the baby's only a day old, I don't know that that's the case.
Right.
What is that on the bottom there?
Yeah, so that looks like perhaps a meta, or that's what I'm thinking. But I looks like there's a little bit of blue basophilia in the meta there. I don't know if I'm overreading it or not, but Dole like kind of colors and things. So Melissa, do you see that, or am I crazy?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah.
So that helps then confirm, like, okay, we are looking at toxic gram likely, right? So yeah, that's where I'm at. I don't know, Toula, are you ready to like guess? And potentially we will be humiliated together.
Yes. I'm thinking, this looks like a septic picture on a newborn. Possibly, I mean, we don't know again if they're 1 day old, but we don't know if they're a full term 1 day old. Maybe it's a premature.
Yep.
That's kind of where my mindset is going.
Yep. I agree. So Melissa, drum roll.
I agree. I mean, the sheet just had information it didn't say, but it either looks like a premature or an infection of some kind.
Yeah, infection.
Cool.
And we actually, Toula, I remember we experienced we had a young child. I don't think there maybe been a couple weeks old at our institution. And I remember I did a diff, didn't report out any reactive features. And then the following morning, so this was like 12 hours maybe later, there was toxic gram, a crazy left shift. Within another 12 hours from there, the patient had expired, and they had a severe infection. And
Wow.
it was remarkable how fast everything turned, because once that started to come out, right, the question was, hey, Dave, did you miss something? Like, did so, and you know, we go and pull the smear, and we look at the smear, and hey, look, an EO. What's up, EO?
Oh,
we pull
I love
the smear,
EOs.
and no, and so, but it was just, I didn't miss anything, thank God. But how fast patients can turn sometimes.
Oh yeah, completely. So that's interesting. So I still don't see, I definitely see the septic picture, but it's more qualitative. Like looking back at that 40,000 white count, I still don't see that necessarily.
I know it
You
doesn't
know,
seem
so
high.
what, and there was nothing really interfering with that. So I'd be interested to see, like, was that an optical count? Was that an impedance count? Like, go back to the machine data and
Yeah, the only
look at
thing,
that, because that's the only part that's not making sense to me.
yeah, the only thing I can think of is just well, it's like normally these kids have like a really high H&H, and so, you know, we're looking at, you know, I could see like a high H&H kind of diluting out the white cells a little bit, and giving the appearance at least, but I'm with you. It doesn't necessarily make sense what we're getting for a white count.
Yeah.
When there's like no NRBCs.
Right. And there isn't a terrible amount of morphology that could also flag. Like,
yeah,
there wasn't anything that could be construed as that.
Yeah, like
I
for
don't
me,
know.
in my experience, and perhaps we had like sick babies, you know, but like this, I don't even flinch looking at this these red cell morph. This is
Yeah, very
garden
common.
variety PD.
Yeah,
Ooh, how beautiful.
that's gorgeous.
It almost looks like it looks like a micromegakaryocyte.
I agree. Did you see that? I was like, I see the spikes on the end of it, like here and like there.
I think it is.
Yeah, that's
That's
strange.
interesting. But
I
like I
still,
said, that's the only one we've seen so far.
so that's, you know, so for the audience, micromegakaryocytes usually associated with Fab class M7, myelodysplastic syndrome, bad things, mostly bad things.
Any situation where you have abnormal division in the marrow, and those megakaryocytes are already dividing in a different way than the rest of the red cells are. So
that's
but
kind of
I would lump it into that category of young cells that we typically associate with newborn babies, you know,
like it's not
with the
crazy.
hematogons. Yeah.
Yep.
Like I wouldn't even suspect like a leukoerythroblastic
No.
crisis or anything like that. That would
I agree with you.
Yeah.
But and this kind of, there's a stress going on. That's, I think this is just more evidence of like a crazy stress
response
child's going through.
Yeah.
And
being born is a stressful situation. Considering a baby's only a day old.
So true.
And then just for students too, this is typically counted like NRBCs, not part of the 100.
Yeah, because it's not a white cell, right? So we want the white cell count to represent the immune response and stuff. So
agreed.
Well, that's why I just wanted to look around this slide and see like if there's anything else here.
Yeah.
But it's mostly immature grands, toxic granulation.
Yeah, and we're kind of entering a thicker area of the smear as well. So I mean, maybe there'll be more concentrated white cells happening as well.
Yeah, and I hope it reflects the white count a little better too. But yeah.
Well, I'm curious, maybe is there anything on the feather? Could there be, maybe that's where all the white cells are hanging out? Like depending on how the smear was made?
You can go to the feather.
So yeah, that looks like another reactive-ish lymph.
Not crazy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. See, there are quite a few cells out there. I wonder if that's why the estimates weren't necessarily matching.
Yeah, Yeah, a little strange. I think that'll end up just being the mystery of this slide is where that count came from. But
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's enough NRBCs or mag frags to really falsely elevate the white cell count, but like you said, the white cell count doesn't correlate.
yeah, at a glance, you know.
But I think it's also, if you think about the clinical significance, I mean, as the neonatologist or anybody or the pediatrician going to really bat an eye if there is a 15,000 difference in a newborn, considering the patient it potentially has a sepsis, does it match up with clinically what's happening with them? We don't know again. Yeah. So we could, I would call the doctor saying, by the way, even though the white count was reported at 40, we're seeing about an estimate of 25,000, at least as a courtesy, just to see, and tell them the little spiel about this is an estimate. It's not an actual count. And they're definitely counting a lot more cells on the analyzer. So maybe there's more we're just not seeing here.
Yeah. So I tend to defer to analyzer. I mean, even though
yeah,
I still, there's way more events being for the analyzer. And then honestly, the biggest pieces of information coming out of this is that toxic gran are the metas and milos, and that signal to the clinician to start to investigate infection and react as soon as possible.
Agreed.
So
agreed.
And whether the count's 25,000 or 40,000, they're probably going to behave pretty similar, to be honest.
Yeah.
Such a high risk patient, and then with the reactive changes.
Agreed.
Toula, you survived.
Yay. I'm excited.
Yeah, these are super
we
fun.
did it. These are
thing
fun.
to do.
I love doing these.
Yeah.
I always love just pulling us the same thing. Like, again, it's you don't know what to expect from the lab itself. It's like you don't know what patients are going to come through. You could just tell the data from what you see, and I love that part of the job, is just being able to look at it. Like, that's my 7-year-old son. I'll pull up a slide and I'm looking at it and going, Mom, that's a target. He doesn't understand what it means yet, but he can identify it. And I'm like, yeah, you want me to tell you about it? It's funny. But it's the same idea. It's like, you never know. Yes, you can pick out identifications, but knowing what they mean, that's where our bread and butter is. That's totally where it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I think we're ready to
Cool.
conclude. Yeah.
Yeah. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. I had a blast. No pun intended. Looking at these. But yeah, absolutely. This is awesome.
And everybody else, thanks for watching.
Thanks for your time.